Okay, everyone, welcome. My name is Frank Russo. I am President, New York Council, Navy League of the United States, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our second national security briefing for the year. I think this is going to be a very exciting topic, given the relevance of with Top Gun Maverick recently out about a month ago now, a little bit over a month ago. If you haven't had a chance to see the movie, I'd definitely go see it. Well worth it. And the topic is very relevant, given everything that's occurring, especially over in Europe, but also as we see the developments of China and the Chinese Navy and their development of their focus on aviation with the launch of their newest carrier. So the timing of this topic, Naval Aviation from the original Top Gun, 1986 to today, and look forward to it. With that, I'd like to introduce Nadia Farouk, who will be moderating today's discussion. Nadia joined the Navy League New York Council back in 2021, joining our board, and then stepped up to a leadership role in 2022 as our Vice President for Education and Advocacy. Nadia professionally is head of IT product management at Standard & Poor's Global. With this, I'll turn this over to Nadia.
Thank you, Frank. It's great to be here. Greetings, everyone. How is everyone doing? Hope everyone is doing well. And I have not yet watched the movie Top Gun, but I am looking forward to watching it after today. So, greetings again. Today, I have the honor of introducing our guest speaker for our second National Security Briefing of 2022. He is a presidential appointee to the American Battle Monuments Commission, United States Navy Fleet Master Chief, and CEO of Kemp Solutions, LLC, based in Dallas, Texas, a leadership development and resilience building company. He is a highly experienced senior executive and leadership with over 20 years of experience at the Navy's highest levels. He is a certified Y coach and resilience building leadership professional trainer, improving organizational strategies, increasing operational excellence, and boosting employees' performance. In his words, leadership is the willingness to step out and be the example, to walk that mission, vision, and guiding principles in a way where others are willing and able to follow. He's a sought-after speaker and social media guest with over 500,000 expressions on interviews and recordings. As the Fleet Master Chief of Europe and Africa, he influenced over 56,000 service members, civilians, contractors, and family members. His dynamic leadership assignments give him a unique perspective while consulting with world leaders on retention, professionalizing their force, and leadership development. He was selected into Commander Master Chief program in 2009 and chosen to represent the Navy on USS Mason and USS Harry Truman. He has received honors from the Office of the President of the United States for his exceptional leadership skills, combat operations performance, and naval impact. Born in Texas and raised in Oklahoma, he is a graduate of the Excelsior College, U.S. Army Sergeants Major Academy, Defense Equal Opportunity Management Institute, Department of Defense Inspector General course, and earned the Samuel Dewitt Proctor School of Theology certificate at Virginia Union. In reference to his exceptional abilities in building resilient teams and tapping into true talent, I want to end with another of his quotes, that people don't really care about how much you know until they know how much you care. Please join me in welcoming Master Chief Raymond Kemp to the podium.
Thank you very much, Nadia. thank you to President Frank Russo and to the entire Navy League family that has facilitated an environment like this for important conversations, not just for a time like this, but always available to share experiences and share perspective. And it is my honor to be here for a moment to capture part of my background, maybe the why I'm here, and then get to the most exciting part of any brown bag, as far as I'm concerned, and that is the question and answer portion. So in 1986, I had the opportunity to join the Navy. Had nothing to do with Top Gun, by the way. Though it was a good movie, and I certainly remember seeing it my fair share of times. I too watched Tom Cruise and thought of all of those pilots that are, getting liquored up and partying and playing beach volleyball and so forth. And I thought, that's probably a pretty good job. I'm not interested in doing that, but maybe that's a thing. And interestingly enough, that was my impression of naval officers when I came into the Navy. As a matter of fact, my first ship was the CV 62, that being USS Independence. And for those who may not have served on aircraft carriers or dealt with naval aviation before your opportunity to volunteer and be a part of such a fantastic organization as the New York Council of the Navy League, let me just tell you that CV and CVN are designators that the Navy uses to let everyone know, sees those names. So you'll often see the name of a ship, United States ship, USS, and then the name. And let's say USS Independence, which was, of course, my first ship, CV 62. The CV stands for carrier vessel. And so that means that it is carrying aircraft, whether it be in the instance of CV, we're always talking about fixed wing aircraft. And my second ship, second aircraft carrier, also my second ship, was USS Independence. And the Indy, as well as Abe Lincoln, were the front end of the aircraft and aviation and exciting new installations on both of those ships. And perhaps we could talk about that later. But the Abraham Lincoln was CVN 72. Now, the N on the end and the back end of that designator, CVN, means it was nuclear powered. And then my third ship, I happened to be their third aircraft carrier, happened to be the command master chief of, was Harry S. Truman. As a matter of fact, Harry S. Truman has my back even right now. I love the carrier experience. Speaking of which, there's also TV programs you're really interested in. What's it like to live and work on board an aircraft carrier? There was a television program done, coming up on 20 years ago, about carrier life. It's probably about 10 episodes, and a good friend of mine, Chris Pennant, was the command master chief of that particular ship, and you could see the inner workings of what was happening in ship life, from cleaning to the food that we eat out there, to getting mail and having access to electronics, not just email. Certainly didn't have that all the time. Funny story, if I may, I was on board Abraham Lincoln conducting a tour, and someone was asking about the area that I worked, which was the intelligence center. And they're asking how we were able to understand what the threat was when pilots would be flying into the combat zone. And we were having a conversation. I said, hey, you could send me an email. I'll give it to my senior leader, and perhaps they can give you an answer with more detail if you're interested. And the woman that was asking the question said, you can receive email? And I said, sure, as long as there's no attachments. So if we have when we had email access, we really changed the way we were able to communicate, and of course, changed the way that we study. But when it comes to naval aviation and the advent of the carrier fleet, for those aviation, whether it be a pilot or aviation support. If you can see clearly, my lapel pin is the 100-year celebration of aircraft carriers. So we started with CV1 Langley, and now the most recent aircraft carrier, CVN, is the Gerald R. Ford. And very soon we'll have our first ship that is named after an enlisted person. And that will be a very, very, very exciting time coming up in the next year, maybe two, we shall see. But when it comes down to order of battle, I would say that is the biggest difference over the last 36 years, as the types of aircraft and the amount of aircraft that we carry on board, as well as personnel. So on Independence, again, Independence was a commissioned aircraft carrier during the time that movie Top Gun came out. And again, my first ship, we had we could carry 70 to 90 aircraft. And so there, of course, would be Tomcats, which was the primary aircraft in the first movie. We could get about 36 F-18s or Hornets on board. There were EA-6 Prowlers. The difference in the aircraft, so the fighter aircraft, which are probably the most Gucci and the ones that people are most interested in because they got a pointy nose and they go super fast. The F-14 and F-18. These days, we'll talk about it maybe later. These days, the F-18 is our primary means of air-to-air combat. But the EA-6 Bravo had a package on it that would allow us to basically, see the unseen when it comes down to electronic signature. The Hawkeye is a long-range aircraft, and it too would fly at a higher level than the other aircraft and give us a literal, oversight of the area of responsibility that the ship may be covering, or that aircraft may be assigned to. So if you think about the AWAC aircraft, pretty popular. It's a big 747 with a gigantic saucer on top of it, plate that rotates, got all sorts of electronic capabilities. On board an aircraft carrier, we have the same thing in the 80s, and even now we still have that Hawkeye, which has that long range capability. The S-3 Viking in days gone by, we used to call it the Hoover because it sounded like a Hoover vacuum when it started up. Towards the end of its career, it was mostly known as an airborne tanker. So it would go up and refuel. And then there were several fixed wing aircraft, namely the SH-60, probably my most recent memory with regard to the helos that we used out there. But there were several different helicopter or rotary wing aircraft, I should say, that we had on board the ship. Now, these days on board Truman, on board Gerald R. Ford, we have aircraft with the same mission. However, there are different, we've modified them so we don't have the need for so many different types of aircraft. For example, the electronic capabilities, electronic detection capabilities of the EA-6 Bravo and the EA-6 have been taken on by another version of the F-18. Same thing with regard to the fighter capabilities of the F-14 that we have also sundown now. Those responsibilities were taken on by the F-18. And so if you think of an aircraft that has a number of different packages that we can put on it. Same foundation, same frame for the most part, but has various different packages on it that allow us to do different things with it. And we are talking about the same thing when it comes down to aircraft. So you think about a police car, and it may have sirens on it, it may have a loud horn, it may have a loudspeaker, flashlights, above the rearview mirrors and what have you. But if you take all those things out, regular Capri. Well, same thing with regard to the F-18. Put all of the bells and whistles, if I may, on board there so that it could go out and do the tanking. It can go do the early warning and indication type of prosecution of the other aircraft in the space. And we can also go up and refuel with it as well as the aircraft. Again, we still have the EA2, the E2 Hawkeye style aircraft. And we also have now the vertical launch aircraft that is known as the Lightning. So that F-35 can also go on board aircraft carriers, as well as drones. And I won't go into the nomenclature of all the different types that we have, but there have been a number of different drones, particularly tested on Gerald R. Ford, that are unmanned aircraft that are shot off of the catapult system on board the ship. So that being said, we have certainly come a very long way. But Nadia, I don't want to go too long just digging into the highlight reel. I do look forward though to generating a conversation between all of us. Certainly, I stand here with a different measure of experience than others, but I imagine that we are all able to put in and be a part of an interesting conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a fan of engaging discussion and having conversations. And I actually wanted to mention that yesterday I spent some time listening to your podcast, and I was so inspired by the sayings, and I quoted them today as well earlier. And I happened to share those with my team in the company, and they were so motivated themselves that, building trust, showing people you care,
Right.
and the measure of any future development really pins on the foundation, and the foundation is how much you can show you care for something. I think those were very inspirational and motivational to myself, and I've been spreading that around.
Excellent.
Yeah, I did want to pick your brain a little bit, if I may, in terms of the future of national security. And you've been in the space of information technology, and you've been navigating both worlds. I wouldn't say that you moved from military into civilian. I think you're still in both worlds, pretty much, right?
I do still have relationships within the United States Navy. I'm actually on the board of advisors for the CNO. So I do have still a relationship. And then, of course, out here in my own business.
Awesome. So, if there's somebody who's in the civilian world right now, and they're trying to transition or get into the space of national security or legislative affairs, you can imagine the kind of challenges that they might be dealing with in terms of support. Like there's a different expectation in terms of culture. When you're in the civilian world, it's like people don't like to see bias. They want to be focused on global issues. They focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. But when you're moving into national security space, you're focused on the security of one country. I guess it's a pretty broad question. How do you bring your leadership advice into this and advise someone in this space who's trying to transition more into national security?
Oh, transition into national security.
Yeah.
Well, it goes back to trust, as we discussed before, as you mentioned before, right? So when someone has been working in the civilian, in the corporate space, their view may be really, really broad. And coming into national security, moving into a particular expertise, let's just say Department of Defense, then we need you more laser focused on a particular task. Confident that everything within your periphery, if you were to turn your head or to open your eyes in a different way, is already taken care of. And so the way that I would approach it is to ensure that all of the things that they may be constantly or commonly focused on within the corporate space, okay, let's have a discussion about those. And then let's take a look at the very formal and oftentimes rigid for a reason, rigid lanes within the Department of Defense that are taking care of those things so that you don't have to worry about it. And so you create that measure of trust, you create that you expose that level of care, and then that allows folks to focus in on those things without the worry of the things that are happening on the outside, which is why when something does go awry, something does go wrong, people are so taken back by it because they trusted the way that it worked before. And so that would be, my highest recommendation. Do your homework, dig into those things that you may be concerned about, whether it be demographics or DEI. Understand what's already being done there, and then don't even worry about it, as my daughter would say, and focus in sharply on what your task is.
So do your best, keep the trust lines open, and focus.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. So in speaking of your background in information technology and information systems technology, can you speak about where you see technology in the national security space? What do we imagine to have drones in the future instead of people flying the planes? Where do you see the future?
Absolutely. So with regard to our technological advances, I'd be very hesitant to guess what the future looks like, because there's a building full of people that are writing that out. And I would hate to second guess or imagine what that looks like. But what we have seen, Nadia, is that our drone technology has grown exponentially over the last 10 years, that our technological proficiency and delivering, armament with those drones has grown tremendously, as well as many other drone uses that we may not see on the news or in open source reporting. We can imagine whether it be the swarm of drones that we see, at athletic games now. There were a number of places. I was surprised at how infrequently it was advertised. But there was a number of places who had a swarm of drones that did a fireworks show rather than the traditional, pyromaniac, fireworks shows that we're accustomed to for Independence Day. I would say that with technology, much the same as our tactics when it comes down to fighting have changed a lot. 30 years ago, it was about boxing, and people were still reminiscing about the boxers or pugilists like Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard. No one was talking about the explosion of MMA and the number of other different, fighting mechanisms that we have, or fighting sports that we have right now. And so technology, from my perspective, is kind of the same way. The way that air-to-air event takes place compared to the way it took place in the 80s, it's very different as well. That's to Frank's question about have aircraft tactics changed over the last 35 years. Though I'm not a fighter pilot, I won't speak specifically to how those tactics have changed, but they absolutely have. The aircraft are faster. We have a longer range of finding out where those aircraft are differently than we did, some 30 years ago. And so that has changed our tactics. As I mentioned earlier, while we were off camera in the green room, I had the opportunity to go to the battle of to speak for the commemoration of the Battle of Midway, and the time at which they discovered where those aircraft were, and how they were able to luckily come across aircraft carriers or destroyers that happened to be in the vicinity of the Midway Island was happenstance, whereas now we know well ahead of time where the combatants may end up being, whether it be air-to-air combat or whether it be air-to-surface or surface-to-air. We're able to assess those in a much different way. So technologically, we are in a great place when it comes to defense and when it comes down to ensuring that we are aligning ourselves with the fly zones and no-fly zones as well.
Do you Is your assessment the same if we think about sea services? So in terms of air services, I, I'm hearing that you're saying that we are at par and we're doing very good. Would you say the same of sea services?
Definitely with regard to sea services, we're extremely proficient. The United States Navy, extremely proficient at sea when it comes down to maneuvering at sea and the various different types of surface vessels that we have, as well as the technology that goes with it. For example, when Captain Russo and I were in the early days of our sailing career on warships, I had no knowledge or understanding of what it would mean to have a controllable pitch rudder, which means that prop, which means that you can kind of accelerate and steer very differently than you would if you didn't have that. And so on the surface Navy, we are certainly more proficient than we have been in the past. And then once again, back to your previous question, technology has created a whole other level of capabilities. The way we can see from space, again, we've made great strides in space that allows us to surveil the areas before we go into them, as well as maintain the battlefield while we are in that particular space. So yes, we're in good shape when it comes down to aviation. As a matter of fact, very recently, while I was on active duty, I served as the Fleet Master Chief for Europe and Africa, as you described in your bio. And what that means is all of the continent of Europe, continent of Africa, and the surrounding waters were our responsibility. And speaking of naval aviation, it was the USS Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush, USS George Herbert Walker Bush. That ship launched more aircraft and recovered more aircraft than any ship in the Navy's history. As a matter of fact, the most of that was done in the Levant area, that is the eastern portion of the Mediterranean. And there was an occasion, regrettably, where we had one of our aircraft have to shoot down another aircraft. And there hadn't been an aviation shoot down, at least for the Navy, air-to-air combat for the Navy. And I want to say World War II. So it had been a very long time since that even happened. So the likelihood of us having air-to-air conflict is still very real, particularly as other countries' proficiency elevate as well. And then with regard to the surface Navy, then yes, there's definitely a different type of threat, and it continues to elevate as other countries, as you mentioned, China with their growing fleet, as well as their aircraft carrier. The Queen Elizabeth was launched very recently, and the Charles de Gaulle, which I've been involved with several different occasions, is another aircraft carrier that has good proficiency.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. I think, this comes up a lot. And I see that in reading about your bio and listening to your podcast, you're into innovation as well, right? And I am a fan and passionate about innovation, and I promote innovation everywhere, even amongst my team. It's not that an idea has to be created from scratch. It's really technology that has enabled us to turn an old concept into something very new.
Right.
And it is the technology that has created the stir in the world, right? All these wars that are happening, and the competition with China, and this talk about them being really far ahead in the AI space. So I think the strength of technology is just so advanced that it's a critical space for us to be focused on and stay ahead on, because it's just one change in technology either enables us or completely disables us.
Right. Very, very true. I would say with regard to technology, just glancing over at the Indo-Pacific region and the fact that we are able to observe what China is doing with they're repurposing reefs into airfields. They're repurposing reefs into what could be seen as bases. And if we didn't encourage the technological advances that allow us to, whether it be see it from outer space or see it from drone long-range aircraft flyovers, then we would just never know. So thankfully, you're right, I am very passionate about creating space for people to be innovative and to think outside of the traditional lines. My why in life is better way, which means that success to me looks like when we find a better way to do something. And the way I do that, my how in life is by challenging the status quo. So just because we've always done it that way doesn't necessarily mean that's the only way to do it. But that being said, thankfully, and again, this kind of goes back to one of the questions we talked about before, with the China repurposing those islands, it does create a surface level challenge that we just formerly didn't have because there weren't bases there, and they are. China is very advanced when it comes down to not only the soft technology, AI, but they're also pretty proficient when it comes down to cranking out ships. And I don't know what their current ship inventory was, but it was growing at a pretty rapid pace as I was moving into retirement, and that could become a challenge. The good thing for us, and what's absolutely on our side, is that we have been doing it for so long. And I've been encouraging the innovative changes in the way that we train, as well as the way we recover and the way that we practice or rehearse at sea. We have grown, again, just kind of pointing back to the conversation we had before, we have grown in the Indo-Pacific when it comes down to our relationships, which allows us to train with many other countries instead of thinking that we have all of the answers on our own. So there has been big changes. And Nadia, one more thing that before I kind of get the exchange going again, we have what some are what we refer to as lightning carriers, right? So the Lightning, the F-35, is a vertical launch aircraft, though it is a fixed wing aircraft. So we have rotary wing aircraft, think helicopters, fixed wing aircraft, think Tomcat, and the F-35 fixed wing aircraft with a vertical launch capability, same as our AV-8. And so those aircraft are on board ships that we call LHAs and LHDs. So USS Kearsarge, which was my first trip to New York Fleet Week, which is just an amazing, amazing time, and how I met Ken Kreitzer back in 2006. But that those carriers are becoming more and more important because of the technology that has gone into that brand new, most popular aircraft that we have in our inventory right now, the F-35 Lightning. Those ships are extremely proficient at getting out to sea because they go out to sea more than the rest of the Navy's inventory from my perspective. And we're doing really well in that space also.
There was something you said which got my attention. You mentioned relationships and our strategy on relationships, because the more I think about this, I think it almost seems as if national security needs to innovate itself to adapt with how things are pacing in this world. Like, are we running after technology? What are we doing? Do you see more strategic conversations happening where the United States leverages relationships to come to more peace in the world?
Oh, definitely. So what I mean by relationships is, in days gone by, the Chief of Naval Operations, who's the senior uniform officer in the Navy, he was seeking, so in President Reagan's era, we were seeking to have a 600 ship Navy. And so we were build on the build, and we had lots and lots of ships, lots and lots of sailors. One reason or another, we ended up scaling way back from there to the tune of closer to 300 ships. However, the CNO at the time, I don't remember which CNO it was, said that we need to have 1,000 ship Navy. What he meant was that our relationships with other countries will allow us to have their ships as part of a fighting force, a joint fighting force as we go into the future. Now, as we have been training with other countries and doing rehearsals with other countries, and that happens on the East Coast and the West Coast of the continental US. It also happens in the Atlantic. It happens in the Mediterranean, as well as the Indo-Pacific area, South China Sea, all around Hawaii. The countries that we interact with, a measure of our technological innovation we share, a pretty good measure actually of our technological information and advances we share, not so much intel, of course, but when it comes down to countries who are within our wheel of trust, then yes, we absolutely do share. And thankfully, their innovative perspective is something that we understand is workable, perhaps on some of our equipment, as well as with our personnel. So, and just one, to kind of put a bow on that, it's not only technology and the way that we fight, it's also the way we manage people. And so I used to host a Eurasian conference, and there were several leaders in Europe, several leaders from Asia, to include Romania, Ukraine. I know the senior enlisted from the Ukrainian forces personally. Had him at my house, had fried chicken for the first time in his life in my place. Anyway, we would invite those, and in several countries from Africa, we would invite them to Naples, Italy, and we would have conversations about how to professionalize their force and the techniques that they use to communicate with the younger generation, some might call them millennials. And that was extremely useful. And some of the practices that we learned from those other countries, we bring into our own ways of leading.
That's interesting. That's amazing. And it is indeed, I agree. It is not just technology. It's not just the quantitative side, but the qualitative side, which is the people side. They both go in harmony. Together, I think the combination of that is what yields good results, and that should be the strategy.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. It's very, very, yeah, it's very profound as far as I'm concerned. The fact that we do it now, some would argue that there's value in telling people that we do it. Some would argue that there is value in flexing our relationships with other nations and the fact that we're sharing information. And then others would say that, you know, it's better that we keep those relationships in silence. And I think there's a solid foundation in between both of those things. I just had my right eye on the chat, and I wanted to just mention to Louis Liotti that I can't really get into the detail of what the future unmanned aircraft looks like, but you know, if we're standing in my backyard with the fire pit going, and we're swirling around a tasty beverage in a red Solo cup, I would say that if we look at the way technology has gone and the things that we are hearing, reported on the news, particularly during the long war that we are somewhat out of right now, we are in a whole nother place. And if America has a vote, and they don't per se, they don't. But if they had a vote on, who goes into battle, do we send an unmanned aircraft or do we send one of the sons and daughters of our nation, then there may be some argument there. Right now, the most efficient and effective way that we have to manage aircraft is with the person inside. And if I cast my 30 years into the future, which is dangerous, but if I cast my eye 30 years into the future, I think naval aviation and aviation as we know it will be significantly different to include domestic aircraft.
Now, I am unable to see the chat, but if there are more questions from the group, please feel free to send them in.
Yeah, and I see and I see an interesting comment from Lewis. I agree. Also from Frank, he has a question there saying, has training changed for the enlisted force? And I'll tell you, this is going to be a slow yes. So training has changed as technology has changed when it comes down to even the basics of our technology and what would be considered, towing aircraft around, for example, on the flight deck. We have figured out more innovative ways to move an aircraft from one area to another and change the tow tractors that we use to pull them around the flight deck. Those have changed as well. So the training for the sailors who are the users of that equipment have definitely been upgraded so that we are more proficient, more effective and efficient as we're moving aircraft. Same thing with regard to fuel. So it's the enlisted force that not only moves the aircraft around, maintains the aircraft, they're also responsible for the maintenance of the propulsion unit, the catapults, as well as the arresting gear. There's maintenance that has to be done on that gear. It has also evolved from days gone by, as well as fuel. So clean, clear, and bright, CCB is the song for the aviation fuelies, and our technology and our ability to ensure that we've got clear, clean, and bright fuel, which we get at sea, by the way, that has changed as well. So yes, the training for the enlisted force has certainly changed.
Ray, hi, this is Frank Russo again. I'm going to help out Nadia since she's having a few challenges on the chat room. One question is in from Ken. Compared to sailors of today to the sailors back in '86, I mean, as you noted, you and I started about the same time. I came in '81. Even by the time I left in the late '80s, sailors had changed, and even during my reserve time, the quality of the sailors had changed. And I think generally in the better way. What are your thoughts?
I'd say that the quality of sailors definitely has changed from '86 to now. And what I would say is that the same grit, the same perseverance, the same strength of character that those sailors from the great generation in World War II through our younger days is the same. When you give sailors, regardless of their age and regardless of the era, the proper tools, parts, material, you help them understand the why behind what they're doing is important. You train them in the skill set that they need to execute their job. They will run through troops and jump over walls and do it at the highest levels. One example would be USS Mason passing through the Bab-el-Mandeb Straits back in 2016-ish, fired upon, multiple missiles fired at them, those sailors proficient enough to shoot them down. In our weakest time, we had ships getting crashed into that were either attacked or crashed into other ships. Our sailors answering the call to put out fires and to keep the ship seaworthy is an example of how the sailors that we have nowadays are just as resilient and strong as those from days gone by. Now, do they have a much higher education? Oh, yes, because the average enlisted person these days, we're over 50–60% have their bachelor's degree. And the number is really, really trending high when it comes to masters as well, comparable to the officer force.
That's an interesting statistic. That's a big change. I mean, I saw that with the Air Force, particularly, bachelor's, master's, even doctorate, degrees, especially with the senior enlisted. Now I see. I got to know. Apparently, there is someone who's dialed in, has raised their hand, and wants to ask a question. Since they don't have access to the chat room, if that individual would take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask your question, that would be great. Okay. If you had to, yes, go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jan. I'm a former surface warfare officer in the U.S. Navy, served 2000 to 2009. I have a question for our speaker. In 2017, the Surface Navy went through two black eyes, I guess a nice way of saying it, with the collisions with the Fitzgerald and the McCain. At the time, you were the Fleet Master Chief. How did that impact you and your work? And do you think that the Navy has improved since then?
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much for your question. I just want to restate it to make sure I get my answer right. And that is with the impact, what was the impact of the at-sea collisions with USS McCain and the Fitzgerald? How did that impact me in Europe?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So first and foremost, thank you for asking the question. Yes, it did have an impact on me. What we did back when you were in your service, and I thank you. Another from one black shoe to another. What we still do is safety stand downs. And so when we had those two collisions at sea, not only did we send a team to go over and do the forensics of the how, the why, and the what happened, we also turned and we did the so what. And so what ended up happening was we did a stand down, immediately a safety stand down, and we talked about the safety of navigation, which was the top of the point. A year and a half later, we had another stand down and we talked about more in detail of, okay, what was going on over there? What was the climate? And so we put changes in place to our training mechanism to ensure that sailors came into our area of responsibility with a higher level of proficiency in navigation, as well as damage control, as well as material maintenance management also. I do believe that we're way better than we were, and we have another level of accountability towards the fleet. And to you and I, that might have been profanity in our younger days, but I think that now we realize that more accountability at the lower level, so peer-to-peer accountability, to ensure that everyone is operating at the highest level possible. So yes, I believe that we are much better than we were in 2017 when those collisions occurred. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. And I see Ken's asked a question about with Gerald Ford implementing the new technologies. Number one is a magnetic catapult, also some weapons lift. How are these working out?
I'll tell you, they're tough. Ken, and I can speak without even knowing the detail of Captain Russo's experience. He knows and I know that when you're the first in your class, it is struggleville. And so there have been challenges with the electromagnetic catapults, the way that they have their flushing water, for example. All of those things very, very different. Their nuclear power plant, all of those things are different than what we have had in the past. And so they're doing. This is along. They're doing okay. they're doing okay with regard to figuring out those things. But as Nadia and I were talking about, when you are at the cutting edge of technology, technological innovation, then your challenges are just at a different level because there's no one there to come in and save the day and say, hey, we've done it this way all along. So they're doing good. And I'm confident that, and I didn't mention it earlier, but the USS Doris Miller is going to be our first aircraft carrier named after an enlisted person. Mm-hmm. That ship gets into the commissioning phase. They're going to have such an advantage because of the challenges that Gerald R. Ford is overcoming right now. They will know that those hurdles are ahead of them and they'll be stretched and ready to get over them.
Okay. Needless to say, there's a lot of concern over Gerald Ford and how long it's taken and how much it's cost to get this vessel out. And it was interesting because the questions around the systems were the same questions when we had the commanding officer for Queen Elizabeth a couple of years ago, and they were implementing, especially the weapons handling, the electronics and automatic weapons handling system. How would these systems operate under battle damage conditions? Let's face it, you get hit by anything, bomb, missile, whatever, is that system still going to work?
Right.
you know, or what's your backup plan? So we have one more question, because I know we're getting close to wrapping it up. We got time for two more questions. Does the increase and continuing increases in surveillance technology combined with the lethality of anti-ship weapons, the hypersonic missiles, directed energy weapons, portend a overall fatal crisis for naval aviation and going against a peer or near peer competitor?
I would say no with regard to a fatal crisis. Now, are we hypersensitive and aware to the advances in technology? And I mean, not just their ability to use different computers to track and get missile lock, but I also mean the technologies when it comes down to the type of missiles that they are launching. Fatal crisis, no, but does it create a space, kind of back to the movie, does it create a space where we have to start teaching different things at TopCon and different things, during the fighter pilot training pipeline? Absolutely does. And we are flexible, as we say, agile, mobile, and hostile. We're able to adjust and prepare ourselves, whether it be surface to air or air to air contact.
Okay. And I guess one final question. You said you sit on the CNO's advisory panel. As much as you can share, obviously, because we recognize that those are all confidential discussions. What's the number one topic facing the CNO? Or number one challenge?
Well, so the panel that I sit, or the advisory group that I sit on, is for DEI and sailor programs. Mm-hmm. And in that realm, it is ensuring that we have legit, and forgive my language, but I'm just talking to you frankly because that's what I do. I'm frank. We have legit and trustworthy diversity, equity, and inclusion and accommodations, by the way, processes in place. We do not, the last thing that we want to have is, oh, this person got the job because they're part of this group, or we have lowered the level so that more people can get in. We absolutely do not want that. Navy operates at the highest standards, and we are the world's finest Navy for a reason, and those standards are a great part of it. So that's the number one thing that we are facing. We're validating processes right now.
All right. Ray, appreciate it. Any last comments to our audience?
Yes, Master Chief, if you can leave our listeners with one comment, one more advice on leadership.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I had a little bit of technological breakup on my side. Yep. My last comments would be, first and foremost, to express my thanks to folks that are interested and are participating in the Navy League, because it is extremely important that we have organizations like that are able to continue to support the efforts of the Navy. The second thing and last thing I would say to everyone, my favorite thing to talk about is that it's our responsibility to be better and to grow and be better. The way that we're able to do that is if we just apply 10 two-letter words. 2 10-letter words that will make us better leaders, that will make us better volunteers, that will make us better citizens, better men and women and others. And those words are, if it is to be, it is up to me. I don't need help. I don't need handouts. I'm going to do my absolute level best. I think if all of us do that, we can make this world a better place and change it from the Navy League outward.
All right. Thank you very much. Nadia, thank you very much for moderating. Master Chief, thank you very much for participating. For everyone that's on the call, and we appreciate your attendance today, especially for our first time attendees. For our members, you may have noticed in the June newsletter, we talked about volunteer opportunities. I'm going to now make my pitch. I'm going to be very commercial right now as to the New York Council. Please look at those opportunities. Also, please note that we will be sending out a member survey around opportunities, soliciting your areas of interest, updating the one that we did last year. Coming this fall, we got a couple of major events. We got the USS Cooperstown commissioning. As noted, we don't have a final date yet. We hopefully on Tuesday we'll find out the next proposed final date. So keep our fingers crossed. And then also in November will be our 120th anniversary gala. Also, members can have a hand in the upcoming programming by watching for the mailbox with the member survey, which I just talked about on mistake. For the many non-members in our audience on our call today, thank you very much for taking the interest in the topic, taking interest in the New York Council. We do invite you to become members of the New York Council. Please go to our website, www.nynavyleague.org, and we can get you signed up to become a member, or if you prefer, we'll take a donation also. Again, we ask that all our members and non-members, everybody, to follow New York Council and the General Sea Services via Twitter. We're at Navy League NYC. With that, I'd like to thank everyone for participating today. We look forward to having you on our next national security briefing. Have a safe and happy summer, and God bless America. Thank you very much.